Hello everyone, this is Joe Brewer in Bar HR, Colombia, and today I'm at the Origen del Agua Nature Reserve, and I'm doing something that is spiritual practice, and today I want to talk to you about bringing back the indigenous lifeways as part of how we do regenerative work, because this is land that was degraded through a series of mismanagement practices where humans did not manage their relationships well. And one of the ways that this land became deforested, and you can see some of the degradation here, this land became deforested in part because a lot of people were cutting down the trees to grow beans and squash as monoculture crops. And then later, working with the British Tobacco Company, they started growing a lot of tobacco here. And tobacco is well known for degrading soils when it's grown in intense practices. Today, I'm practicing connecting to the land through a spiritual method using the medicine of the Andes, tobacco. And I'm smoking this tobacco in the way the indigenous people do, or at least as I'm slowly coming to learn how they do, where they say that tobacco is a sacred plant that embodies the ancestral wisdom of our grandfathers. And so as I breathe in this smoke, into my mouth, I don't inhale it into my lungs and blow it back out, and it absorbs into the membranes of my mouth. I start to become more alert and more connected to my surroundings. And the specific thing I want to talk about is the recuperation of spiritual connection to the sacred, because tobacco is a sacred plant of the indigenous peoples. But here in this region, it was part of the destruction of the territory because of the way that the land was managed. And so right now, I'm here on the land at one of our ritual sites, that little cairn, that pile of rocks right there. I built that pile of rocks the day that we finished our negotiations with the Campesino family to buy this land and steward it on behalf of their family and of the territory. So the people of the territory and the non-human ecosystems, all of the peoples of the territory. And what I'm doing, well, what I did that day, which was back in January, was I came and I smoked tobacco. And I put the last little stub of my tobacco under that pile of rocks and stacked it up. What's powerful is that my daughter, without knowing this was my gift site to give blessings to the land, give a gift of gratitude, is that my daughter came and started playing here and built her own ritual site. All of the rest of these rocks and all the little rocks lovingly piled on them were here from my daughter, who's learning ritual practices to connect with the land, and she's 4 years old. But what I'm doing right now is as the ashes, as this tobacco is turned into combusted carbon, as I'm gifting it back to the native plants. And as I do that, this bare ground that has no real life capacity at the moment begins to have a little gift of carbon. And that is a physical or a scientific aspect of what I'm doing here. But the other aspect that's more fundamental is I'm building a sacred relationship. And I realized as I'm smoking this tobacco and listening to what it says, right now there's a bee crawling on my arm, I feel welcomed by the land, is that I feel like I'm coming back to say the humans here did not remember the sacred relationship of this plant and how it connects humans to the wisdom of their grandfathers. And so while my grandfathers did not live in this land, my grandfathers lived in Europe, and then their descendants lived for a few generations in North America, in the United States. Is that I want to return a sacred relationship to the plant that helped destroy this land and offer gifts, little gifts of carbon to a native plant, as a symbolic way of saying I want to restore this relationship and that I seek the blessing of the land to do so. And I wanted to share this practice with you to show that while there are a lot of, ecological science aspects to what we do here, understanding soil science and the interdependent web of life and cultivating soils and how grasses relate to trees and pollinator plants that attract the bees and the wasps and the birds to come and pollinate and spread them, but also to bring seeds and disperse them. that the humans need to return to right relationship, and we can do this by recovering an ancestral relationship to plants that are part of the destruction of the land. I want to share this with you because I see these spiritual practices as being very powerful for helping us to find right relationships to ourselves as we seek right relationships with landscapes. So I hope this brings you some things to reflect on and think about, and that it inspires you in some way to work on restoring your ancestral connections to land, even if it's not the land of your ancestors. And that you too might discover some destructive practice that humans have done and transform it into a different kind of relationship as your own spiritual regeneration while you work on the land. So with that, I hope this inspires you to go out and regenerate some degraded land yourself. Onward, fellow humans.